Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to today's Reddit Quickie from the subreddit HFY, called Billy Bob Space Trucker, written by Legal. The link to the original is down below. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. The war had been going in favor of America so far, despite the vastly outnumbered their natural fighting ability and control of the FTL gates in the near systems made sure that they had significant edge in logistics. They did not mean that the war was going great, however. While they were still able to fight well above the weight, and every soldier or ship that they lost, they'd take down 10 Xeno equivalents, they were still fighting the rest of the known galaxy, more or less. The Council founders would suffer for it, but they could afford to lose even more than that, and still start grinding the American forces down. Even so, the Americans didn't go down lightly, as demonstrated by the recent battle of HF432. It likely wouldn't be written about in the history books. HF432 was a dead system that didn't seem to have any importance aside from a minor FTL junction. An American scout ship had been ambushed by a Xeno destroyer that was more than twice as big. Long story short, both ships were destroyed dead in space, but that didn't mean both ships were entirely dead. "Anyone still alive?" Corporal Jones was asking as he looked around the engine room. The bridge had been hit hard, but Jones and 2 other Marines had survived in their pressure suits. The scout ship had only a crew of 10, and 5 of those had been Marines. There was movement as they saw someone wave from the back of the engine. Jones moved around the damaged and vented engine room to see a figure in a pressure suit working on the engine. His suit had several patches on it, and even duct tape in one spot. Overall, it was stained and damaged, but his toolbelt looked secured. "What the frack are you doing? The ship is dead," Jones asked as he saw the person working. "As the engineer, it is my job to scuttle it," came the reply. "Oh, Steve, right?" "Yep, the name's Steve. If the Xenos want to try and steal our nav data, they'll turn this on to get the power going. And if everything goes right, it'll explode right in their faces. Wait, but we need to call out for help." "They blew our comms up first. I already corrupted the nav comp just in case, but either way, the Xenos will find us our own." "Crap," the Marine growled. Then, thinking about how to break this to the others, he thought it over and he looked through the hole in the side of the ship and saw the Xeno cruiser drifting from the inn. "Hey, what about their ship?" The engineer looked up. Frack if I know. I'd never worked on a Xeno ship before." "Whatever. An engine is an engine, right?" "No, not even close. Do you have any other ideas, Steve?" The engineer sighed as he finished tinkering around with the engine before shrugging. "Frack. I guess it's that or just waiting to die in space. Get the others." Jones nodded and retrieved the other 2 Marines who had been trying to salvage the bridge, to no avail. Howie and Tina met up with Jones and Steve in the engine room as they climbed through the hole and stand on the outside of their dead ship. "What makes you think we can turn it back on?" Tina asked. "We've got no idea if we can even start it up where it would not wreck in battle," Steve replied, clearly full of optimistic confidence. "But it's dying here for sure, or maybe dying over there. Only got so much oxygen left." "Thanks, Steve," Jones muttered. Tina and Howie jumped free, boosting towards the craft. But before Jones and Steve stopped him, "Hey, I'm the engineering suit. You're the ones with the marine pressure suits. You gotta carry me." "Oh, sorry. Nearly forgot." The Marine gripped the engineer under his arms, boosting across the void towards the destroyer. The dead planets of the system were far away to the side. The 4 humans entered the Xeno ship the same way they left their own, through a hole inside of it. They were up on the bridge, which had been smashed up pretty bad in the attack. Steve couldn't fit any of the small chairs, so he leaned over the seat, typing on a console. "There's some power left, I think. I got no idea how to transfer it up here. We need to get to engineering." The engineer led the Marines deeper into the Xeno ship. They were passing floating bodies of the Phyllis, that most people called flaccos, cause they looked like geckos mixed with flies. He didn't like to look at the dark interior of the headlamp swept over the corridors. So, on top of being full of dead bodies, the shape was all wrong. Finally, they found a path to engineering. A massive blast door sealed the front of them. Steve tapped on the panel and hissed at him as he flashed red. I'm guessing that means it's locked. or still sealed against the pressure of the vacuum. He looked around, and then he pointed at another pressure door that they could seal behind them. There wasn't any power to it, but there was a manual override. The problem was that the bolt seemed to be missing a lever or a handle to turn it with. Maybe you need to solve a physics puzzle to find the last piece you need, Howie said. Maybe you're an idiot, the engineer muttered as the Marines laughed. Instead of going searching, he pulled out a wrench from his tool belt. The old fastened it into place. I don't think these guys ever figured a single person could do something like this. He began to turn the wrench, slowly lowering the blast door into place as the machinery creaked and groaned. Why wouldn't they just leave something in place to lower this? Tina had asked as the engineer slowly lowered it. "'Cause they're weak," the engineer grunted as he kept turning. Finally, the blast door sealed as you detached the wrench. "I'm fairly sure none of them have the strength to operate this on their own. Probably got a robot to do it or something." They turned back to the engine room, and Steve stepped up, tapping the control panel once more. This time, it beeped at him, and there was a hiss as the door opened, oxygen rushing in to fill the makeshift airlock. As the door slid up, they saw the light inside, and were met with the surprised faces of what had to be 20 flaccos. They had swords and some sort of energy torch, and a number of nasty-looking melee weapons. Marines braced when the shining light came down, and they started to dance. It was some sort of high-pitched Xeno music, as they broke into a team dance choreography of some kind. "What do we do?" Howie asked nervously. "We're totally getting served." "Aw, you frickin' kidding me?" Steve asked as he pulled out an old worn 911 from his tool belt, shooting one of the flaccos through the head, immediately breaking their rhythm. "Fricking shoot them!" "Oh, yeah," Jones muttered as if his thought hadn't even occurred to him. The Marines raised their guns and started firing. 3 Marines and an injured engineer against the 20 flaccos. It was a massacre. Dancing and melee weapons did not hold up well against automatic weapons and a 45 cal. They weren't even fast enough to make the Marines need to lead them. Once they were dead, greenish-blue blood splattered across the walls and machinery. The Marines checked their weapons while Steve moved forward, pulling bodies off the consoles he needed to check. "You can get this up and running, right, Steve?" Tina was asking as she watched him work. "No idea. Just trying to figure out what they have to do with readings." "Yeah, but it's an engine. And you're an engineer. Why the hell does everyone assume that I can fix any kind of engine? Besides, even if I get this turning, I'm not a pilot." "What? You can't fly this thing? I thought engineers knew how to do that stuff," Jones said. "You're the Marines. You know how to hotwire tanks, fly assault craft, right?" No. We were never trained to do that. Then why does everyone assume that I'd be trained in that other crap? You wouldn't ask an OBGYN to help an oncologist, would you? They simply stared at him as he shook his head. "Never mind. It's all like energy and power and electrical stuff, though, right? Didn't you go to college?" Jones was asking. "To a party college. It was all about booze and co-eds and hazes for 4 years. Regardless, I'm an engineer on human systems, and specifically ship engines. This is Xeno engineering. You expect me to just come in here and take a look at the panel and... He was looking at a panel and tapped a few buttons. There was a hum as the ship felt and shift. "It's got some impulse power. It has some sort of emergency system to take us to a nearby station." Jones opened up his mouth, but Steve pointed at him. "Not a freaking word, you guys. Gosh, got lucky this time." They sat around, wasting time, waiting for about 2 hours until they heard the gentle thump throughout the ship, and the engine began to spin down. Looking around, they gathered up the weapons and waited for the door to slowly grind back open. They were staring at a bunch of space ants and something they hadn't seen before. "It's like part orc, part bear." "An orc?" Tina muttered. "No, you idiot. Clearly, it'll call it a bork," Steve said firmly. "Who are you?" the bork questioned before saying, "I'm he who has survived the dread culture mittens, red-furred devil of death. I have been tasked with the greatest human alive to guard the station. None shall harm it again." "Oh no," Steve muttered. "What?" Jones asked. "This idiot means mittens, my brother's cat." "Your brother is the greatest human alive." The engineer let out a heavy sigh, slumping a little where he stood. "My real name isn't just Steve. It's Stevie Ray, little brother to Billy Bob, space trucker." Billy Bob felt dirty. He hadn't really been doing anything wrong, but somehow looking at the xenophysiology made him feel dirtier than looking at porn. Porn was totally normal, just an everyday part of life. But when he had to start reading stuff that was all scientific and clinical, he much preferred the way that his parents had given him the talk when he was younger. Straightforward, no BS, the facts that he needed to know, the rumors he wanted to know, and a bunch of stuff that he didn't know was physically possible. Sure, it was a lot to take in as a junior high kid, but at least he sorted it out, human sex before high school, and that xeno-sex ed class with Mrs. Munchausen. High school was too young for people to be introduced to the idea of sex with xenos. Then again, maybe he wouldn't have been so worried about this stuff with Emily if he hadn't been properly prepared. It was hard to keep track of his beliefs when his life kept making him question the ones he had. It was a lot easier to keep trucking when he was just trucking. Now that he'd become some sort of figure for an intergalactic war, stuff had gotten complicated. And that didn't even cover what he learned about the Libertonians. So long as he could keep his gloves on, he should be able to survive the night. But her beak... His research had mentioned a bunch of biting. He was alone on the bridge with Rosie. He'd gotten fired up and heading into FTL lanes to get closer to the final destination. Well, not final, if everything went right. Either way, he was alone trying to figure out the logistics to a problem that he'd never expected to have. It was a crucial midterm project name, how to get some and not die, and he wasn't sure how long he had before the teacher demanded he turn over his work and hope for the best. He had plenty to worry about, without even considering the fact that his translate had struggled a few times, and he had to pray to God and Washington and even Andrew Jackson that he'd read it correctly. He wasn't sure if he was excited or terrified, or much more likely it was just giving him the fear of boner, since it was a challenge that he could kill him, and also involved getting laid. It was one of the truest challenges any American could ever attempt. He'd already joined the Void Club, thanks to an extra-large pressure suit, and a flexible woman back in the community college. It had been rather uncomfortable and awkward, but damn if doing it while Earth hung above them wasn't an interesting experience. Of course, that was when he was younger and stupider. Well, maybe stupider was relative, because that was when his biggest worries were community college classes, and not getting too drunk over the weekend to miss out on this part-time job. The main issue was his boss was his dad, who, at the slightest hint of a hangover, would go into his "how do you sell the chicken to a deaf guy" routine, which was loud. So loud! Billy Bob was deep in thought about how to proceed when he heard someone walking up the steps to the bridge. He quickly typed on the console, closing the extra-net windows and doing a quick check to see if anything had sound going and might have missed. Once he was satisfied everything was off, he turned the screens back over and saw the nav comp and internal systems that he was actually supposed to be looking at. "Hey, Billy Bob, are you all up here on your lonesome?" Emily said as she leaned back and smiled at her. She leaned in to rub her cheek against his for a moment and glanced at his consoles. "Wow, we're already this far along. Have you been flying through the whole sleep cycle?" "Hey, it's a big fat ship, but there doesn't mean it's slow." He smiled at her and rubbed a hand along her side. "The space hamsters should be waking up soon, right? Then I guess we should talk with their, what do you call the leader? A Khan." Billy Bob arched an eyebrow at that. "What, those fuzzy fat little hamsters? They got to be something wrong with my translator. Hold on." He scrolled through the translator to figure out what was going on. He called them space hamsters, a group of hamsters that were called a horde. Oh. His translator figured the leader of a horde would be a Khan. Well, time to change that. A little more custom input and... Okay, tell me again. "The fluffiest big shot fancy pants." "Excellent," Billy Bob said with a wide grin as Emily wondered just what he'd done. She knew that he was up to something. So far, it seemed like he was going to have to learn how to settle in and relax. A share of piloting the ship with the hamsters, since when they woke up he knew that they'd offered to help him fly Rosie. He should really spend more time with Emily. Talk with the fanciest pants to figure out what the plan was for ruining the galactic government. "You know," Emily slowly slipped around his seat, sliding onto his lap. Once more he was a little surprised at her weight compared to her height. He knew that he should expect it, but it was just hard to retain the brain relative weights after a lifetime of heavy gravity. We're all alone. She rubbed a hand along his jaw as he blinked. He wasn't ready for this. Mr. Billy Bob, sir. He heard a voice squeak from up the stairs. Thank God. Coming. He picked up Emily. Sorry, looks like we're out of time. She huffed as he set her down and walked down towards the approach of the horde of hamsters. Come on up. You're the new bridge crew. There was about 8 of them, which for Xenos was a skeleton crew to do what he was about to do on his own. Yes, Mr. Billy Bob, can you throw us around, please? Sorry, but not until your shift is done. They all let out a collective groan. Sorry, but it tires you little fellas out too much. You can't have it dozing off on the job, can we? He rubbed their heads as he walked past, followed by Emily as he looked into the fluffiest big shot fancy pants. It took him a bit of time to discover all the rest of the space hamsters were in a mess. He saw the big top hat Mr. Monopoly and shouted, "Ah, there you are, my good, hamster," which seemed to startle the figure who hadn't been facing him. The Xeno diplomat grabbed all the food on his plate and shoving it into his mouth before turning around to look at Billy Bob, his cheeks nearly exploding with food, contrasted with the much too posh clothes that he was wearing. That is adorable, Emily whispered next to him. I know. How has humanity not met these guys before? Seriously, Billy Bob, aren't they so cute? They override all my predatory instincts to kill and eat them. Billy Bob raised a brow at that and looked over at his girlfriend, and then he looked a bit more concerned when he saw the mix of hunger and amusement on her face. Whoa, you don't eat sentient beings, right? Oh, no, it's just, they do resemble a prey species back home. Keep it together, Emily. Right, sorry. Sheesh, thinking about eating our guests. Humans would never do something that creepy. Well, Americans wouldn't at any rate. Well, moving on. Mr. Monopoly had been working to swallow down the giant mouthful of food that he had, and they had to wait a few minutes before he could finally cough it out. Apologies. You startled me and my instinct was to eat the hearty last meal. That posh upper-class British accent made Billy Bob smile. That's just fine, Mr. Monopoly. I say, what does that name mean anyway? Oh, you just resemble a very wealthy and affluent human, known for having only the fanciest of pants around. Oh, what a remarkable fellow. Is he a living human? Oh, no. He's long gone, I'm afraid. Well, it can't be helped. I'm sure I'll find reading about his life most enjoyable. I do enjoy the fanciest of pants around, you know. Once, I even paid a fellow for his fancy pants and took them on the spot. Yes, they're right up there with a nice pot of humbush and a few wicker nibbles to dunk it in. Billy Bob slowly shook his head as he watched the space hamster talk. Was this real? Was this some sort of joke the Brits were playing on him right now? They were probably still mad about the time whether their first space colony was raided on the 4th of July as the Americans stole all the tea and then threw it into the planet Star. Or maybe it was that time that the Queen was taking a tour of the UHG colonies and an American had rigged their sound system to play Stars and Stripes forever instead of God Save the Queen on every planet. But no, this couldn't be a joke they'd set up, not in the middle of a war. Right? They did have some dry humor. He kept his eyes open. No lie, he was going to play a prank on Billy Bob. Ah, right. Well, fancy pants aside, we were hoping to discuss the plan for getting us into the big council gathering. Yes. Of course, most delightful indeed. Splendid, in fact. They looked at him as he looked back. Well, I say, my dear fellows, what's the plan? What? We wanted to know what your plan was, Emily said. Oh, right, yes, of course. That would make the most sense, I suppose. We just need to talk to my chief sneaky busybody. Billy Bob checked his translator. That was a direct translation as far as he could tell, and he hadn't changed another custom input. These were the words that they used, and his translator tried to tell him their leader was a Khan. If ever a computer could be more wrong. Well, where is he? If I knew where he was, he wouldn't be my chief sneaky busybody, now would he? Of course not. Billy Bob was about to ask how they could find the space hamster when the PA came on. Mr. Billy Bob, please report to the bridge. He looked up at the ceiling and yelled, What is it? Is this line private? Yeah, sure. Why not? They're pirates. The rest of the hamsters around him squealed out in fright and began to shovel food into their mouths. Jesus Christ, you guys don't frickin' choke. I'll be right there. He grumbled as he quickly ran back up the bridge. Rosie had come out in a system where they dropped out of FDL lane to get to refuel. A small ship was out in the viewport, and they saw the bridge crew shivering. What kind of ship is that? It's a Bork raiding vessel. They must have at least 30 Borks on board. Billy Bob sighed and walked over to the comm screen. He brought up the channel with the ship. Ah, good, this is the Space Hamster, Captain. Come to surrender. No. This is Billy Bob Spay, Colonel of the United States Space Force, and I'm ordering you to freck right off now, before I come over there and kill you stupid frecks for delaying my ship. What? The Bork was obviously surprised with the voice and tone of the person that he was talking to. You can't talk to me like that. I am the feared. Yeah, don't freaking care. You've got what? 35, 40 of you over there. I've cleared out an entire station on my own, and now I have a Libertonian girlfriend with a power suit. So, are you feeling like today is your lucky day, punk? He cursed after he said that. Wait, no, hold on. I've got something better. He paused for a moment, trying to think up something. But he was waiting too long, so he quickly just went with, why don't you bend over and frick your own face, he yelled into the mic. What? That's not we... This must be a trick. That ship has Space Hamster registration. Yeah, and I took it over and enslaved them. You know how it is, the weak prey and the strong. And I'm the strongest there is. Do you want me to come over there and show you? Huh? What species are you again? Human. American subspecies. He could hear muttering in the background. The species engaged with war with the Council right now. Yep, that's me. I mean us. There was more muttering, and the different voice came on. Are you the wielder of the beast mittens? You heard of him, did you? The 10-foot-tall, 6-legged predator with the 3-inch claws. Of course we have. You have to go about your day then. We're very, very sorry to have bothered you. Yes, we're very sorry. Please, we'll just go about our day. Hey, you spread the word through to the other Borks. Only raid space poodles, our space crabs, and fish cops. Leave the space hamsters alone, or we'll come after you once we're done with the Council. Yes, of course, we'll spread the word right away. The ship turned and started to make haste away from Rosie. Billy Bob grinned as his crew stared at him. Are we your slaves now? What? No, I made that up. You're all free people. Crap. Great Abe's ghost would strangle me on the spot if I enslaved you funny little Furbies. No. Cheered at that and then one opened up a PA. Mr. Billy Bob saved us all, and he ended up piracy against space hamsters everywhere. He could hear cheering across the ship and stood with his hands on his hips, the biggest, stupidest grin on his face. Somewhere he knew an American flag was flying patriotically in the wind. Freck, it felt good to liberate people. And so ends another chapter in the adventures of Billy Bob Space Trucker.